The House Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture and Rural Development and Natural Resources will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Borton.
Here.
Representative Mueller.
Here.
Representative Green.
Present.
Representative Roth.
Here.
Representative DeSena.
Here.
Representative O'Neill. Representative McKinney.
Here.
Mr. Chair, 6 of the 7 subcommittees members are present. A quorum of the subcommittee is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Rep. Mueller moves to approve the minutes from February 25th. There being no objection, the minutes are approved. Sorry about the late start. The appropriations meeting ran a little bit over. Before I get started, I was just notified that Bill Hamilton lost his wife last night. So, yeah, a sad day, obviously, for all of us here, because he plays an integral part in helping me get the MDARD budget completed. So please keep Bill and his family in your prayers. All right, we'll go ahead and get started today. Our first presentation will be from MDARD, and we'll be hearing from Director Tim Boring and also Sylvia Renteria. If you would make your way to the table, please. And the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Always good to see all of you and have the opportunity to join you today and talk a little bit about our MDARD budget. It's always great to have a chance here to explain the work we do and collaborate with our legislative partners on how we improve quality of life for Michiganders. Really thrilled to have Sylvia, our Finance and Budget Director, with me today here. So somebody who knows our budget and finances in and out and can certainly help me answer any questions that you all might have about the details of our budget here we're going to share today. So this core mission of MDARD here, we're here to protect Michiganders from the pump to the plate, supporting farmers and producers who put food on the table and creating economic opportunities within the agricultural industry. It's really guiding work for us on a daily basis. We're a small agency of people who live and breathe agriculture, who are at MDARD because this work means something more to them, and who can appreciate the vibrancy of this industry and understand the importance of continued success for our farmers, communities, and rural economies. As you all know, we are one of the leaner agencies with just over 500 employees, and we emphasized efficient service delivery as a key goal within the department. Michigan and our state agency programs are seen as a blueprint for our federal partners in many respects, most recently with the announcement that USDA is looking at Regen Ag as a program. So I appreciate all of you for your understanding the importance of supporting this industry and the importance of our ongoing partnership. In the last year, I've had the honor of testifying before both the U.S. Senate and U.S. House Ag committees on our programming and what's working here in Michigan, which I think is a testament to the success we're having and is an acknowledgement of the intentional investments to support our industry as it faces some pretty significant hardship and uncertainty. Both Chairman G.T. Thompson, who leads House Ag Committee, and Chairman John Bozeman, who leads Senate Ag, have been complimentary of our work here in Michigan. And I continue hearing from our federal delegation that what we have accomplished through our bipartisan relationship here at a state level sets us apart from counterparts across the country. Before we dive into the components of this new exec rec, I want to share a little time updating you on a few areas that are working well. First is our Farm to Family program, which was the newest bipartisan budget program here in FY25. This has seen significant interest at a federal level related to what's possible for access to healthy, locally grown food when you strengthen regional food systems. Thanks to the bipartisan appropriations, we've already assisted with moving 100,000 pounds of local protein and produce to serve more Michigan families, and that puts more fresh food on dinner plates across the state. We're also reviewing submitted applications for our latest grant program, our last Food Mile grant, which specifically works to address infrastructure and transportation, one area we consistently hear is needed in our listening sessions to get fresh homegrown food to producers to consumers. We've seen over 130 applications for this program, which is a testament to the need and the interest. The Farm to Family program is also overseeing our Good Food for Michigan project, which specifically targets procurement practices. This is an area we hear about consistently of why are institutions like hospitals, school districts, and colleges here in Michigan not sourcing directly from our backyards. These contracts should be prioritizing Michigan growers and producers and the opportunities to ensure local healthy food to more Michiganders. We've announced this project at the end of last year and had our formal launch here last month. We were down at the Kalamazoo Valley Community College, which has infrastructure that can really serve as a model to replicate across the state with their Valley Hub. So what we're doing down in Kalamazoo of highlighting their work of what's seen as example of what's possible when we create more market opportunities. I'll also mention too of American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall specifically mentioned local institutional procurement in his testimony to House Ag Committee just yesterday about talking about this as another pathway for boosting domestic demand here across the country. So we're excited about the potential impact of this project. Our Farm to Family team is currently hosting listening sessions and participating in meetings around the state. So if you're interested in attending, please get in touch with our staff and we can make sure we can coordinate that. I also know this committee understands the importance of the MEAT program and our regenerative ag program, so thank you for your continued support, which allows us to administer grants to conservation districts to bolster both of those programs. In 2025, the MEAT program completed 262 new verifications. We've begun conducting soil health assessments to educate farmers on the health of their soils and to guide implementation of regen ag practices to improve the health of those soils, and we've now done 420 of those assessments. These outputs are not just for the programs, but across the department, to me, convey the ongoing interest in so many of our efforts. These programs are designed to support farmers, and they're coming to us as a resource, and we want to be that resource as a state agency serving Michiganders, so thank you for the ongoing bipartisan support to continue to do that. I also want to spend a little time discussing farmland preservation, as that has certainly been in the news here recently. You all know about the legislative changes that occurred to the program in the last year, but I wanted to share some of the data with you. In 2025, approximately $75 million in farmland preservation tax credits were issued to landowners enrolled in this program, which not only helps a farmer's bottom line, but also puts money back into rural economies. Those tax credits come through Treasury, as you know, but they help ensure farmland and open spaces remain that way. The program currently manages over 3.1 million acres of farmland by managing more than 420,000 temporary development rights agreements and 192 permanent conservation easements. I also want to note that since I came on board as director, I've put a big emphasis on internal processes and maximizing efficiencies. This includes realigning our IT services and our licensing services into one program area. Our averaging processing times for new licenses is now 24 days, and renewals take around 2 weeks from start to finish. These internal changes have created smoother, speedier experiences for licensees, strengthening our ability to provide responsive, modern, and customer-focused service. Thankfully, we've heard positive feedback about these improvements, and we have more planned to ensure that we're making an impact and being as efficient as possible. Given I've worked with all of you for the last few years here, I thought it was important to share an update of some of the things we've been doing here before we dive into the proposed budget for the next year. So thanks for allowing me a few minutes to share these highlights. So Governor Whitmer's 8th and final executive budget recommendation doubles down on Michigan's long-term priorities and delivers lasting results for Michiganders. Amid national economic uncertainty driven by tariff and deep federal cuts to programs like Medicaid and SNAP, the FY27 budget lowers costs, protects access to health care, and helps more families live, work, and play in Michigan while maintaining a balanced, fiscally responsible approach. The FY27 budget builds in a strong record of bipartisan process to address kitchen table issues that matter the most. It supports good paying jobs, fixes roads, strengthens public safety, and ensures every child can read, eat, and succeed, keeping Michigan open for business and moving forward. For instance, her recommended budget includes the creation of Farm Start, which we're excited about the potential to build a centralized approach to supporting the next generation of farmers and ag professionals, directly correlated with the health of our industry for the future, and with it, business growth and economics. I'll share more about that in just a few moments, but I wanted to share the big picture of the numbers with you all here. MDARD's budget recommendation for FY27 includes total funding of $148 million, which includes just under $73 million in general funds. We're one of the smaller state agencies, making up 0.1% of the total state budget. And when you can see that context, it's a reminder that we're a pretty lean department, but we're making important strides for our stakeholders, and it's work that we can all be proud of. The graph here with the slide shows how the recommended budget will be appropriated across our department. And as you can see, food safety and animal health operations are the largest focus, followed by our agricultural development efforts. There are 5 proposal areas in the budget rec to highlight for you today. And first and foremost, I want to note that our investment proposals are utilizing existing restricted funding. So we're asking for the authority to spend these funds in a way that was originally intended, which is important to me. And these are not general fund increase requests. So the first to highlight for you is Farm Start. And this would be a $2 million investment to support beginning farmers and agricultural professionals. The program would create a resource hub for young and beginning farmers and those entering careers in the agriculture industry. The focus here is creating a centralized approach for assistance, streamlining resource support with education, land acquisition, financing, everything needed for the long-term success of Michigan's future agricultural leaders. This is a program that's been conveyed over and over again as something that's needed at a state level, and it pulls directly from the Michigan Farm Bureau policy book. It also really emphasizes here the fact that in times of economic challenges like we're seeing before us here today, it's the early career farmers that are at the greatest risk within the market. So this is a program that is specifically tailored to working on meeting some of the needs we have in front of us today. Happy to have additional conversations about this proposal as we see fit here. The budget rec also includes $300,000 for the Qualified Forest Program. As all of you know, the program provides grants to provide private landowners the forest management activities and supports conservation districts in advancing sustainable forestry practices. These funds go directly to conservation districts and fund forestry programs there. Governor Whitmer is also recommending a stronger approach to dangerous and unregulated food and drink additives. The $1 million appropriation would ensure our consumer protection efforts can properly respond to these products that are categorized as dangerous by the FDA, those that pose a health risk to consumers and yet are becoming more and more common in convenience stores and are often marketed as energy-boosting products or supplements. I know there's currently bipartisan legislation to address some of this, and we're looking forward to providing some perspective on what we're seeing here across the state. Another priority proposal area for FY27 is the Fair Food Network and the Double Up Food Bucks program. The proposed budget maintains funding at $5 million. Thanks to ongoing support, our partners of the network have been able to expand to 17 new sites with another 12 planned expansions on the horizon. This program is a win-win for our growers and families who benefit from it. It's currently with over 1,100 growers participating and benefiting from Double Up Food Bucks and over 188,000 households currently served through the program. The fifth proposal to put on your radar is MDARD's budget rec is the Agricultural Equine Industry Development Fund. We're calling for a $2 million increase, which would pull increased revenue from online gaming. The fund would support activities that strengthen breeding, racing, and those related to agricultural businesses. So again, these are 5 proposals that pull from available restricted funding and do not constitute new general fund funding. I also want to call out 2 interagency proposals here, aspects of the recommendation that impact us in a direct way here at MDARD. The first is the transfer of the Rural Development Fund Board and the grant program and its associated grant program to Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity per Executive Order 2025-9. The second is $3 million for making much-needed upgrades to the existing pesticide licensing system and integrating it into the department-wide licensing portal system, which is housed within DTMB's budget. This is a system for us that serves over 25,000 licensed applicators and businesses, and right now is operating on severely outdated infrastructure. So to close this morning, I'll just say this. I want to zoom out and talk a little bit about our industry as a whole here. As you know, we're the second most agriculturally diverse state in the country. I know you all can appreciate how important it is to keep our industry vibrant, but making sure that we've got the conditions to continue to support this kind of diversity is certainly paramount to us here at MDARD. So not only are these budget recommendations going to allow us to continue these services, but they provide the opportunity for us to deliver intentional programming that responds to direct feedback from farmers and business professionals who want to stay in this industry. So thank you for all of your time this morning, and I look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Thank you, Director Boring. Do we have questions from the members? Rep. Roth.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought I heard Tim, and I'm just trying to make sure that I heard this. The $1 million ask in the governor's rec, did you describe that as what that was going towards?
I'm sorry, which one was that?
The governor, or the executive rec is $1 million. And you talked about $1 million going to something. I sort of caught it, but I didn't all the way. I apologize. So maybe just some clarification of what the exec rec is asking.
Certainly.
Another $1 million for.
It continues to work around consumer protection efforts for products that we increasingly see available at convenience stores, other things that contain products the FDA has deemed dangerous or currently unregulated. So it provides some support within the department to make sure that we're adequately ensuring customer protection for FDA unlicensed products.
Maybe to add to that, are you hearing any directives from the federal government about processed foods? I mean, the potato industry is very concerned that some of the potential fed processed foods part of it may be an issue for them. I don't know if you guys seen anything at this point.
Well, we're certainly engaged in those discussions, right? So this budget proposal is not really targeting that aspect of processed foods necessarily, but this is part of a broader context, right? Of like we're caring and valuing about food in kind of a different way than we have in the past here. So, we're engaged with FDA, other USDA agencies here around like the definitions of what processed food might be. But I think it speaks to this broader narrative here about ensuring healthy access to food. And something I'll say too, that as we look around the longer positioning of Michigan for success into the future, the Michigan agricultural industry, like this is a place that we're going to be increasingly competitive. Like we can grow healthy local food in a way that many places in the country simply can't. So making the investments today to position us to capture on that success into the future, I think is really key to long-term positioning.
I'll pause until somebody else asks a question.
All right, Rep. McKinney.
Thank you, Chair Borton. Thank you, Director, for being here. How are you guys? Always good seeing you all. My question is around the Farm Start program.
Yes, sir.
How long has it been around? Because this is kind of like my first time hearing it, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And we need to be investing in that. I'm a strong believer in making sure that Michigan continues to be one of the strongest farming communities and states in our country. So, yeah.
Absolutely. The proposal as included in the governor's recommended budget would be creating this program from scratch for us, right? So it's a new program proposal. Really, this is something we've continued to hear about for several years now. And going back a while, right, having conversations with USDA Farm Service Agency folks, MSU Extension, that the fact that the state hasn't really had like a beginning farmer resource hub, like is done in a lot of other places. It's been kind of a hole within our programming, I think, in a lot of ways. But if anything, the challenges around, like, how do you start a farm? How do you get into this? How do you have support for early career professionals? And we're specifically being nuanced around this. It's not just farmers, but it's ag professionals as well, right? So how are you creating jobs in rural economies that are a part of this agricultural system? We have a pretty significant veterinary shortage across the state. It's a major challenge for the livestock industry. Like, we've got to be doing something to address those kinds of efforts. We've got a problem with not having enough mechanics around, right? So, like, how are we purposely creating more jobs within the agricultural industry, knowing that this all kind of feeds onto one another, right? Sometimes early beginning farmers, like, have a day job and start farming as a side hustle, but that grows over time here. So, this proposal, it's a pretty modest request here. We're building out, continuing like a lot of the specifics of what the program can be here. But I think it does address the need of the fact that MDARD hasn't really been active in this space, working alongside Farm Bureau, Greenstone, MSU Extension, USDA Farm Service Agency, to be building collaborative programs that are well aligned with others.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you guys' effort and focus on trying to figure out how to create those pipelines and set up the ecosystem to make sure that we, continue to farm here in our state. I know that's one of the biggest concerns I hear a lot traveling across our state. So, thank you.
Okay, Rep. Mueller.
All right, this is kind of a two-part statement instead of a question. And it's nothing to be negative towards you. I'm not trying to get on you at all. I'm just trying to give you some examples of, you know, the question is how do you start up a farm these days, right? In farmland preservation. You don't start up a farm these days because there's too much bureaucracy and government interference with farming. For example, processors at an apple cider mill, which I happen to know pretty well because it's me, had a visit from MDARD that said that when I dump my pulp, I should dump it when I dump it across the street, or if I give it to other farmers for like food, it should be in a plastic bin. Wait a minute. Wood is a natural, wood is natural, right? So you dump it, and then he says, well, if you're giving it to farmers, you need to put it in a plastic bin because of health reasons. It's like you're giving it to pigs, right? It doesn't make sense, you know? And then you have issues of trying to expand your family farm, right? And so you build things because agriculture is mother nature, right? In 2012, we had a bad freeze, we lost everything. So we build a wedding venue, right? To have secondary income, because we don't really want to give up a family farm that your grandfather purchased for $5,000 back in 1941, right? So then you have to go out there, and then you have to pay hundreds of dollars to put up a silt fence in a cornfield, because now you have a building next to it. That field was there for 100 years with everything being plowed and everything else, and now that you have a building there, you have to pay someone all this money to put silt fence in. And then you get to the fuel tanks. We have 80 acres, and this applies. Well, you can't have a fuel tank within 800 feet of your well. Okay, well, since everybody's developing around you, where do you put your well? And where do you put your fuel tanks, right? So then you have people come out when you're having an event, and you just, you rig up a sink by a fountain and put a bar of soap so people can wash their hands. MDARD and the health department work together. Well, they say since it's going through a sink, it has to go into an approved septic. But then you ask the question, what happens when you take that sink away? Can they wash their hands? Yes. How stupid is that? All right, and then you have then you have the personal property tax. It's government at its finest. You buy a piece of equipment. A donut machine might run you $80,000 used. You're open for 3 months out of the year, and then you want to pay personal property tax on that. Who can afford to be a small farmer and not a corporate farmer anymore? So land preservation also comes to the bureaucracy that many departments in this state, I have witnessed firsthand. Who wants to do it? What it does is it gets you so fed up with government bureaucracy that you sell. And then you don't have the family farms. We're a third generation, and I don't know if we'll get it to be fourth because of the government. So these are some of the common sense things that you need to look at, all departments, not just you. Why do we have to put apple pulp in a dumpster when you have apples growing on a tree that fall on your own property that break down? Are they going to make us start picking those up too? It's getting a little ridiculous, and you're not going to get anybody to do this. The only reason why I do it is because it's been in my family for so long. If not, how are you going to start up a cost? How are you going to buy the land? How are you going to get the licenses? How are you going to conform with all the regulations that they're putting on? Who's got time to drill a $150,000 well, cement it in cement because you already have a double enclosed tank sitting there that's not going to leak anywhere? If you want future farmers to do it, you need to loosen up the red tape and let them be farmers and let them be stewards of their own land and let the government get the hell out of their way. Thank you. Sorry for the rant.
That's all right. I assume you're not looking for an answer to that.
No.
So, all right, very good. All right, well, we'll move on. Next question, Rep. DeSena.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Boring, for being here. And I appreciate my colleague, Rep. Mueller's comments. So now you're going to hear from the beef and sheep farmers. I'll just be really brief. I'm happy to see that we are grazing some of the solar property down in southeast Michigan. That's been a big thing in mind. If we're going to put industrial on agricultural, we should at least be grazing and we've got a healthy land market. So that's one of our positives in Michigan. We have a very healthy land market. And I expressed my concerns the last time you were here about our processing industry. And we've got to do something because without processing, we can't have cattle and sheep. And we have, to my colleagues' comments, to just to dovetail on those, we have a real problem with regulation in the processing industry, or it's a dual problem, regulation, and we have to find a way to encourage them to be here. You've seen what's happening in Nebraska with the beef processing plant that closed in Nebraska. We are losing processing facilities, not gaining them. And I believe Michigan does have an advantage over other states. I agree with you on that. And I look forward to solutions where we can increase the amount of cattle, beef cattle that we have in the state of Michigan and increase the amount of processing that we have. Obviously, every consumer out there knows there is a problem with our beef industry right now. Everybody knows it. It's not a secret. I also would agree that we could be raising more lamb here in Michigan, and I'm hugely concerned. I've been fighting the data centers. I'm hugely concerned with the loss of farmland with the data centers, and every farmer I talk to has the same concern. Our agricultural production is going to be going down, not up, unless we do something really quick about trying to divert some of these facilities from our most productive agricultural farmland. Thank you, and I welcome any comments that you have based on that.
Well, I'll just say a couple things there. Like the processing continues to be a real focus for us at MDARD. Like that's the path to diversification so many different kind of ways. Like there's a lot of value in building these regional food systems, but frankly, a lot of this work is expensive, right? So it's something we're continuing to look at and trying to figure out how we can be creative, like problem solvers on making this happen. And it's some of the investment of not just how we go about doing things, but the value of state investment in a lot of different facilities here. And to the point about the certainty of things moving forward too, right? It's even harder in some of these difficult economic times when folks aren't making a lot of money. Maybe the beef guy is accepted. But too many folks aren't making enough money in agriculture today, and it's hard to plan for the future and double down on long-term investments when it's such a murky path to even economic profitability. So it's certainly something we're interested of and we're dedicated to working within our scope here in the state, but making sure we're active participants in what happens at the federal level too, because so much of this does, like, those federal actions dictate so many of the terms by which Michigan agriculture is going to continue to operate within.
All right, Rep. Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Boring again. I want you to kind of elaborate on the pesticide license part as a former licensed guy myself. How is that going to operate? A little concerned when we get into DTMB and IT. It's not one of our favorite subjects here in the legislature. And a lot to do with the timing, how long it takes. I mean, I was working with a gas tank thing, and we're 2.5 years down the line, and that software isn't anywhere near to complete. So please elaborate on the pesticide licensing changes that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, and I'll ask Sylvia maybe to chime in here too. The continued upgrades to our IT systems all across the department, like this stuff gets more and more expensive all the time. But at the same time, we know that when we've got some of these programs that are running on very, very outdated software, it's a pretty big vulnerability here to the efficiency of our programs. And it has a specific demonstrable effect on producers and businesses here that are interfacing with these systems when the systems themselves don't really work very well. So we put a hard priority here on leveraging creative fund acquisition to however we can go about improving these systems, whether we're doing improvements internally within us. It's about routing through some of these DTMB processes. So we're really glad to see that DTMB allocating a portion of their budget to be able to go towards the investments of these systems here, right? This is a pretty frontline public-facing program here that is going to have some specific improvements here for user interfaces, customer access here for farmers and producers accessing those. So anything else, Sylvia?
I'll just add that we've already gone through the work to build out business requirements. We've already mapped out our current process with an old database, very paper heavy, and we've mapped out what a new online heavy system would look like that would integrate with our other licensing products. And so we've already done that work to see what our system would be ideally. So a lot of the work has already been completed. So as far as once funds are hopefully allocated, we are ready to go with seeking a vendor and moving quickly on implementing and developing a new program.
Are we changing the way the license, are we still having the state offices where we can go in and get our licenses, or do we do this online? What's the future looking like for that?
Yes, folks and staff will still be available in the same way the application process would be transitioned to an online system where you would get immediate results or immediate action. Right now, when you send in a paper application, there might be pieces of information that are missing. So then that takes up time with the back and forth to get that. With an online system, there will be required fields so that when you submit your application, you know you have all the required items that are needed. So there will hopefully be quicker action on getting your license.
And quick, Mr. Chair, any changes in timeline as far as renewals and that kind of thing?
No, there should be no changes in the actual license itself.
I would just say too, that I think for us, it continues to be like a comprehensive approach to the work we're doing. Like, I love going out and talking in a really public way about like Farm Start, our food procurement systems, the call for processing in a lot of ways. But at the same time, that we're making sure we're spending time internally within the department upgrading some of these unglamorous IT systems, right? Rep. Mueller, to your point here around sometimes conflicting regulations, the things that don't always make sense, like how are we cleaning this sort of stuff up? How are we making sure we're streamlining this stuff? It's not glamorous, it's not always very public, but it is stuff that we're prioritizing well because we see the need for this kind of internal operational efficiency improvement.
We're quick classes are still available for the licensing process for pesticide license?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I got a couple of questions here, a couple quick questions here, because we're going to have to move on here. Talking about the, well, first of all, I guess my question is, what universities in Michigan can implement and evaluate a soil health and regenerative agriculture program besides MSU? Are there any other universities in Michigan that can do that?
MSU has the greatest capacity. University of Michigan has built out some of their soil health and environmental programming in a pretty significant way. So we have done some work with University of Michigan in these areas as well. It's been a priority for us too to be engaging in some of the other schools around the state here. And it's really part of, we've ramped up scientific capacity in the department so that we can talk these things in a really comprehensive way and work with research partners to advance the science we need in these areas. So that kind of work is important for us as engaging with other departments and other universities as well. But Michigan State continues to be the leader in this area.
Okay, very good. And my last question is regarding the migrant labor housing program. What benefits are the state seeing from that?
Well, I think certainty of living conditions, certainty of helping producers understand of how to navigate like regulations and the processes in place, I think continues to be a real front and center effort for us. All of our inspectors that are out there, the grants that we're working with CTAP agents here in conservation districts, like education continues to be a first and foremost effort for the department here. That the goal with us is clear and clear understanding of the rules and regulations on the books here. The goal is compliance. The goal is that producers, ag businesses, we all understand what's expected of everybody. And that we're working forward then to accomplish those sorts of things jointly. So.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate both of you, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. All right, next up will be the Department of Natural Resources, and I will welcome Deputy Director Shannon Lott and DNR Finance Chief Dan Lord. Please come forward. And just to let you know, I have a hard stop at noon because I have to testify in natural resources. So, and I want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to ask you questions. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Borton and Vice Chair O'Neill. Nice to see you all and members of the committee. Thanks for having us today. I did bring a couple other folks here from Wildlife and Fisheries just to help with some of the narrative today. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about our 2027 budget. As you heard Director Boring talk about, the last and final budget for this administration, and this one does invest in conservation and natural resources, so we are thankful for that. And you all are aware of our challenges. We've talked about this over the last year, so I'm not going to go into all of that. We're going to talk a little bit about everything we manage and what some of our ideas are for this year, some of the challenges and opportunities. And you know it's a math problem, so we've been talking about that a lot. Everything costs 30% more than it did the last time we went through a license restructure, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And where the money comes from, where the money goes, so that you guys can see that hopefully pretty clearly today. And people fund what they value, right? So we just want to make sure that we know you value natural resources. You guys all use natural resources, and we know that we've had conversations throughout the past year on how to really take the challenges and make them opportunities. So we welcome that. Our first slide here is basically our mission, right? So you all know and probably have seen this mission, and we want to just emphasize that these resources are for you all, right? We've talked with Chair Borton about this before. We manage these resources on behalf of the people, for the people here, and for those in the future, right? These are held in a public trust doctrine, so the people of the state own them, and they're held in a public trust for us as required to manage all the resources you'll see here. So I do want to make that clear. I don't think we've been doing a good job of that in the past, of making sure people know they own the resource and we just manage it. So thank you for that. Having a balance, though, in the resource is not easy. So these are just some of the numbers we'll throw out to let you know. If you don't know, we have the largest state forest system in the country. So out west, a lot of federal forests. We manage the largest state forest system in the country, and a lot of minerals. So the 4.6, 6.4 helps you remember those numbers, 4.6 above ground, 6.4 below ground. So that's a lot of our portfolio. We also have the largest state park system in the country, and a lot of people don't know that. The most visited state park in the nation as well, with Belle Isle, minus Niagara Falls is actually a state park, not a national park, so minus Niagara, but we're most visited state park in the country, which is a huge gem for us to get to manage. And then our game areas as well, which you'll hear a little bit more about in coming slides here. So next slide talks about our trail system too. We are deemed the trail state. We have the most trails of any state. Hopefully you guys know this and have seen this on a lot of our paraphernalia. And boat launches for all the Great Lakes fisheries that we have. Obviously we have the Great Lakes, most freshwater in the world here. And then we stock nearly 19 to 20 million fish a year, as much as we can, and what's needed with our stocking agreements with other states surrounding the Great Lakes and with Canada. So we need to maintain that. And then dams. I'm just going to highlight dams. We talk about this a lot. You guys know we have 239 dams in DNR, many that were given to us through the tax reversion process back in the day when we got most of the land in state ownership. So not things we bought on purpose. So still need to maintain those so that we don't have issues like the Midland and Edenville dams, right? We have commodities too. You'll see that ebb and flow. So the market commodities, you know, our timber, our oil, our gas, aggregates, minerals, those things are up and down. We go up and down just like the rest of the economy on those issues and on those things. So you'll see a little bit of that as well in the coming slides. So I'm going to hand it over to our budget director, Dan.
Okay, good morning. Again, appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Just picking up where Shannon left off and taking a moment to recognize the role we play in supporting businesses and jobs in Michigan. These snapshots and figures that you see before you are from our website, making that connection across a wide range in economic sectors. Travel and tourism are probably the first that come to mind, considering the 38 million people that visit Michigan State Park System. Then there's the different types of recreation that occur out across the fields, the woods, the water. That's hunting, fishing, and boating. And again, managing these resources on behalf of the state and Michigan citizens, as Shannon mentioned. The management of natural, cultural, and recreational resources also includes business opportunities supporting industries such as timber, oil, gas, aggregate, and metallic mining. And it equates to billions of dollars. It goes back into the state's economy each and every year, as well as supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs. This chart is just a quick snapshot. We'll look at this a couple different ways over the next few slides, but really comparing the department's current fiscal year budget for fiscal year 26 and what's proposed in fiscal year 27. I think the two rows that I really want to focus on or highlight are that state restricted row there, about 4 down, and then down towards the bottom, the total general fund. So the proposed increases in the state restricting funds we're going to emphasize later associated with hunting and fishing licenses, as well as watercraft registration, in addition to the change in the gas tax that we saw from previous legislative action and activity. And again, we'll dig into these a little bit later. Sorry, this jumped ahead on its own. I didn't even touch anything there. Well, it's important, I think, to mention and recognize the ongoing challenges and the tough decisions that will have to be made in the state associated with the general fund, as well as the continued volatility that we see in our federal programs that support our activities. So supporting restricted fund proposals provides a potential buffer against general fund and the moving and evolving world of our federal funds. So another way to look at the recommended budget, again, for fiscal year 27 is where the funding comes from. So I'll point out again that federal wedge of the pie as well as the general fund. Everything else that you see is made up from restricted fund sources, and we have over 40 that we're responsible for. So restricted in terms of where they come from and how they can be used, all defined in statute. It's one of our greatest challenges. When there's a problem in one or multiple funds, we can't use other fund sources to solve them. Like the last slide, the pie chart reflects the proposed increases of game and fish. So to give you a reference point, our current year, it's at $87 million and about 16% of our portfolio. And I'll bounce over to the other side with waterways, which is currently $33 million and 6%. I'll touch on the primary funding sources for each wedge and a little bit of the pressure of within certain ones. So game and fish, hunting and fishing licenses that we'll talk about. The unknowns with the federal. So again, a large portion of our budget, we receive over 30 different grant programs from agencies like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, U.S. Coast Guard. An example of one of the challenges last year was the pause that we had to take because of ongoing litigation between state and federal sources with terms and conditions. That impacted not only us with our marine safety program, but also the funding that goes passed through to the local county sheriff departments. Fortunately, we were able to resolve that, but we're back negotiating terms and conditions yet again this year, not only there, but also USDA and our Forest Service programs. So moving along, park improvement, camping revenues, general fund is, as you all know, the state's tax base. We receive less than 1% of what's available. Waterways derived from watercraft registration. Forest Development Fund, timber sales. And I do want to take a moment to say thank you for the general fund support we received, not only in supplemental fiscal year 25, but also in 26. I think many of you took time to visit with us up in those impacted areas. So 25% of the state forest system that is the primary revenue stream in that division. I heard an interesting statistic this morning that going back to the market high 7 years ago and including the ice storm, that fund has seen a reduction of 39% of the revenue streams coming in from timber sales. So a really big impact, but we do appreciate the support that you've provided to combat that. Recreation Passport, that's the vehicle registration associated with about a 40% participation rate. And then there's the park endowment, another component that supports the state park system, which is the royalties and revenues from oil, mineral, and gas exploration, metallic, non-metallic. I think it's important to note, too, that Eagle Mine, the only nickel-producing mine in North America, is ending production. Over the last 10 years, that's been 30% of the revenues that come into that particular fund that we won't be seeing again into the future. So volatile markets, as Shannon talked about, and again, weather is volatile as well, plays a role with our ORV and snowmobile sales from year to year. So next slide, really quickly on where the funding goes. I think the majority of these wedges, really the names primarily speak for themselves as far as the divisions that receive those restricted fund sources, federal and state funds. The only outlier is the one that says communication and customer service, that's a combination of our marketing outreach and our Michigan History Center. The other wedges, like grants, these are individual lines that are appropriated across divisions, so those are external grants that go out of the department. And then I'll pause for a moment on capital outlay. Again, the reinvestment in the infrastructure that we're responsible for, and you're going to hear this as a strong and reoccurring theme. So what you see here is $84 million, taking into account the potential increases from the proposals before you. Currently, we're at $52 million. So our overall need within infrastructure that's outlined in our 5-year capital outlay plan is $992 million. So nearly $1 billion worth of needs. So if you take, what's before you here at $84 million, you apply it over 5 years, that only touches 40% of what we've identified within the infrastructure that needs to be replaced, upgraded, and taken care of. A couple other things just to point out, because you won't see appropriations in our budget, you'll see them in other agency budgets that are derived from game and fish. That equates to $6.8 million. These are supporting services that go to the Attorney General's office, Auditor General, DTMB, civil rights, the list goes on, as well as payment in lieu of taxes. So again, funding that goes through back to the local units of government. Game and fish, along with our other major fund sources, pay for those supporting activities. And also on the revenue side, there's $3.5 million of game and fish revenue that goes back out to the commission fees for that retail network that sell those licenses across the state. Just to tee up Keith and Randy coming next, we'll lead into the first major proposal, and that's associated with $29.4 million of ongoing of state restricted fund sources to right-size the cost of hunting and fishing licenses in Michigan to combat the effects of inflation, increased demands and changing uses, and the better support of fish and wildlife management activities and infrastructure needs. What you see before you is a reflection of the bipartisan legislation that's been introduced and passed through Senate Bills 276 and 277 to amend the hunting and fishing license fees. And before I hand it off, just a couple other additional points to consider, and that's the impact of inflation. And that compounds over time. So 2014, the last time that we saw an increase to hunting and fishing licenses, $100 back then, adjusted to today's dollars, is the equivalent of $138. The flip side of that is it means we only have 73% of the resources purchased with hunting and fishing licenses in 2014 that can be applied and purchased in the current times. Another operational impact is salary and wages, which are negotiated through unions approved by the Civil Service Commission, passed along as part of the budget and appropriation process. They're deserving. Our staff work hard, as well as they do across all agencies. But if you go back and look at those incremental increases since 2014, that equates to a 43% increase just in that other operational cost consideration. So 2 things to keep in mind that are outside of our ability to control, and when revenues are fixed and not adjusted, that creates the structural deficit that we have in our game and fish fund. And I'll turn it over to Keith.
Thank you, Dan. I'm Keith Kentai, Assistant Chief of the Wildlife Division. Really appreciate the opportunity to shine a light on how this proposal will impact our division, our stewardship responsibilities to the public, and some of the challenges we're facing. For more than a century, Michiganders have built one of the most remarkable wildlife conservation legacies in the nation. Deer, elk, wild turkey, wood ducks, and many other species have been restored from near extinction, and millions of acres of habitat have been protected and enhanced. This legacy did not happen by accident. It is the result of sustained commitment, science-based management, and the strong support of hunters, anglers, trappers, and other conservation partners. Through regulated hunting, trapping, habitat restoration, and enforcement of laws, our wild animals and wild public lands have flourished. What would our state be without this legacy, without our abundant wildlife and our wild public lands? The Wildlife Division shares the trust responsibility of stewarding this legacy. We provide expertise and leadership by collecting and analyzing data, monitoring wildlife disease, and helping to resolve conflicts between people and wildlife. We also manage nearly 500,000 acres of public game and wildlife areas and help ensure wildlife benefits across millions more acres of state-administered public lands. These managed lands and waters offer some of Michigan's last best places and not only support hunting, fishing, hiking, wildlife viewing, and other outdoor activities, but also provide for clean air and water and reduce flood risk for communities. Since 1939, the funding for this stewardship has relied almost exclusively on hunting and fishing license fees and federal grants derived from excise taxes on firearms, ammunition, and archery equipment. Though all Michiganders benefit from this stewardship, for nearly a century, it's been hunters, anglers, and sport shooters who have been paying all the bills. In the absence of alternative sources of conservation funding, we have no choice but to continue to rely on hunters, anglers, and sport shooters to carry this responsibility. Yet in the last 25 years, Michigan's hunting and fishing license fees have only been increased 2 times. The last time 12 years ago, as Dan mentioned, in 2014. Relative to other Great Lakes states, Michigan's hunting licenses are tremendously undervalued. Michigan ranks 6th in the nation in our total number of hunters, but we are 33rd in what each hunter spends annually on hunting licenses. Consider Michigan's resident deer license, which accounts for over 66% of all hunting license revenue. At $20, our resident deer license is the cheapest in the Midwest and half the national average of $39. When adjusted for inflation, Michigan's resident deer license has never been cheaper. The last thing we want to do is drive down hunting participation by raising the price of licenses. Yet many hunters and hunting organizations have indicated that they support license fee increases, as demonstrated by testimonies for Senate Bills 276 and 277. And study after study has indicated that across the U.S., demand for hunting and fishing licenses is generally price inelastic, meaning increased pricing does not impact demand. For the last 18 months, the department has been trying to sound the alarm. Because we have not increased revenue to account for the impacts of inflation, we are rapidly losing the resources that we need to meet our stewardship responsibilities to Michigan's fish and wildlife conservation legacy. While we have a long history of operating as a lean organization, things are starting to get extremely difficult. Consider these facts. Since 2005, the Wildlife Division has lost nearly 1 in 5 full-time employees. Due to flat or declining state and federal funding combined with inflation, we've lost the equivalent of $12.5 million in annual purchasing power over the last 7 years. That's 21% of our budget. Because our bills keep going up, it's our operating budget that's had to absorb these reductions, which amount to almost 40% in the last 4 years. That's 40% less for things like habitat and land management, species monitoring and research, and equipment, facilities, repairs, and maintenance. Because of these reductions, we continue to face challenges managing our assets. For example, most of our field offices and storage buildings are more than 50 years old. Leaking roofs, failing heating systems, and outdated equipment are impacting public service, causing disruptions and driving up energy costs. Bringing these facilities up to modern standards will cost an estimated $20 million. Most of the vast wetland managed infrastructure administered by the Wildlife Division has aged beyond its engineered lifespan. This is different than what Shannon has mentioned. These are dams that we want. This infrastructure supports wetland habitat and exceptional waterfowl hunting opportunity. Yet many structures are failing or close to failing, and many need major repairs to meet dam safety standards. Fixing these issues will cost $40 to $60 million. Lastly, much of our heavy equipment is very old. More than 1/3 of our tractors are at least 35 years old, and some date back to the 1970s. Repairs are getting harder to make, and equipment lacks modern safety features. Replacing this outdated fleet will require at least $10 million. These challenges are not the result of neglect on our part. They are a symptom of the accumulation of decades of insufficient funding to adequately manage our responsibilities. The truth is, we are a division that's being held together by duct tape and a dream. There are no bloated programs. There is no fat to cut. Without changes, we face a future of continued erosion of our already limited capacity to deliver for Michiganders and to uphold our stewardship responsibility to Michigan's wildlife conservation legacy. The only sustainable long-term solution is some type of inflationary adjustment and/or some alternative source of state conservation funding. Despite these challenges, our team continues to achieve extraordinary results. This past year, we enhanced tens of thousands of acres of habitat through planting, prescribed fire, invasive species control, and water level management. We hosted and supported thousands of hunters on public land. We conducted surveys and research on a wide range of species to guide science-based decisions. We tested thousands of samples to track wildlife disease and protect public health. We supported hunter recruitment efforts through youth and veterans programs and continue to strengthen partnerships statewide to conserve and restore important habitat. Our team continues to operate responsibly and efficiently while adapting to changing conservation challenges. We have helped Michigan remain a national leader in deer and Canada goose harvest and hunter success, and our public lands provide unmatched opportunity in the eastern United States. And our Wildlife Division team did all of this work and so much more with a budget that's little more than Oakland County's Parks Department, and with a workforce that's about the same as your local Walmart. We could be doing so much more. Wildlife conservation challenges are growing, yet our capacity to meet them is shrinking. We are losing ground, and we are in danger of literally losing ground. We are risking losing irreplaceable habitat, species, infrastructure, and our outdoor traditions. The continued care of our shared wildlife conservation legacy will take the best efforts of all of us. We could be doing so much more. With additional resources, we could be expanding public and private land access, an opportunity for hunters, trappers, and other wildlife recreationists. We could be strengthening public and private land conservation through more active habitat management and incentives programs, especially for wetlands, grasslands, and deer winter habitat. We could be expanding hunter recruitment and retention programs and opportunities. We could be doing more to reduce human-wildlife conflicts related to deer, geese, and other wildlife programs by growing Hunters Feeding Michigan and other new solutions. And we could be doing more to deepen education and partnerships to make wildlife conservation more important and relevant to all Michiganders. We could be doing so much more. Michigan's wild animals, wild places, and our hunting and trapping heritage are more than a legacy. They're a living promise, a promise that these best parts of our state will endure for those who come after us. Generations before us honored this promise by investing their passion, knowledge, time, and money. It's our turn. This legacy isn't free, and it isn't guaranteed. We urge the Michigan Legislature and those who care about this legacy to support sustainable conservation funding solutions and to help keep the promise to protect a wild Michigan. And I'll hand it over to Chief Claremont.
Thank you. Hello, Chair Borton and subcommittee members. Very honored to be here. And let me tell you, I'm truly blessed to be able to serve as the fisheries chief for the great state of Michigan. As I go around the state, I hear from residents, visitors alike, that say when they think of Michigan, they think of our water and the life that it supports, i.e. the fish. Chinook salmon, coho salmon, sturgeon, bass, walleye, pike, muskie, panfish, trout, grayling, etc. The list goes on. Our fisheries are the most diverse in the world, and it generates over $4 billion in direct economic activity and tourism, not counting boating activity. We manage a major portion of the Great Lakes. We have nearly 3,300 miles of Great Lakes shoreline, 11,000 inland lakes, and over 50,000 miles of streams and rivers. But managing those freshwaters, it takes dedicated staff that are supported by sufficient operating budget and infrastructure. Unfortunately, because of the flawed funding model that Keith mentioned, it is all falling on the backs of our anglers to pay for the management of these resources. And it's leaving us in the past and way behind what we need. As I see it, if something doesn't change, our fisheries will be at risk, and the opportunity and tourism that it provides will be in jeopardy. So how will we fail? Our infrastructure consists of many assets, including 6 complex major fish hatcheries, 17 highly specialized fish stocking trucks, 5 salmon and trout collection weirs, 4 Great Lakes stations and a large vessel at each station, 2 inland stations, 10 major fish ladders, multiple field offices, warehouses, shops, not to mention all of the nets, boats, and other specialized equipment that we need to maintain our world-class fishery. The inflationary pressures have hit all of those infrastructures. Our ability to maintain those have been lost. The image in this slide represents an example of the maintenance triage that we've had to face when we had to replace last year a wooden pipe at one of our hatcheries. Let that sink in, a wooden pipe. If we didn't address these infrastructure needs, these facilities will fail. And let me also say the appreciation I had for this committee and their support last year of one-time funding to help our hatcheries. It was that funding that allowed us to say now we don't have wooden pipes in our hatcheries any longer. However, we still have an existing $150 million of outstanding infrastructure needs, not including the 55 dams that Fish Division owns. Go to the next slide, please. The impact of the inflation isn't just in infrastructure, it's also in our operations. Operational capacity has been decreasing over time, 30–40% declines in most measures, and the last license fee adjustment over 12 years ago didn't change that trajectory. Our field units that were responsible for collecting data on fish populations, stocking walleye from rearing ponds, conducting egg take operations for future fish stocking, are staffed at a level that are well below what we can do to effectively stock and manage the fishery in Michigan. I've asked the staff to recognize that this is an all-hands-on-deck emergency. Our skeleton field crews are now staffed at a level where one person is responsible for 500,000 acres of fresh water. In any other state, a fishery staff member would be responsible for 15,000. Our state is over 500,000 acres that they have to manage alone. Reduced field staff and capacity has impacted our ability to inform stocking needs, has resulted in unacceptable delays responding to public concerns such as fish kills, or just simply our ability to conduct basic surveys on the health of our water bodies. If we got a call today saying there's a problem with a lake, I would have to give the answer that our lakes can only be surveyed once every 90 years. This inability to both manage our fisheries and conduct the surveys is really leaving us in peril. I've restricted all travel, so our staff have very limited ability to travel to any meetings, both in-state and out-of-state, which also reduces our ability to have a voice at decisions in the future that are affecting our fisheries. Fish food costs have gone up 70% just in the last few years. We have less ability to stock fish and have declined from over 40 million fish that we used to stock to now under 20 and declining. We can't collaborate with partners on critical lake and stream habitat work, as well as supporting our youth fishing programs. As we look to manage, to this image, I originally put an image of a backup generator at our Wolf Lake Fish Hatchery that over a year and a half ago, during a planned power outage, blew up and started on fire. That was supporting millions of dollars of fish in the hatchery that could have been lost. I want to see us turn away from that tragedy and to the image where you see youth out fishing across our great state. This is our future. The good news is there's a unique understanding of the funding issue both across the legislative chambers with the Senate bills 276 and 277 and the House bill 5093, as well as the executive requisition. Our angling groups know how important this is, and they've been pushing for solutions. The potential solutions for the new funding model are on the table. Over 140 angling groups have signed on in support of this, of addressing the fisheries funding issue. The budget proposal before you today opens a door for those possibilities, and the passage of a new funding model for fisheries that could allow us to increase our fish stocking and management, have substantial impacts on Michigan tourism industry, reinvest in youth fishing programs, and much, much more. Your support will have a direct benefit on 1.2 million anglers in Michigan and all of our residents to improve the quality of life for everyone in the state. Thank you very much.
I am mindful of time, so I'll pick up the pace and get through these last slides. But our next proposal is associated with the watercraft registration, something that hasn't been adjusted since 1993. This proposal reflects $6.9 million of ongoing state restricted fund to right-size the cost of recreational boating in Michigan to combat very similar effects of inflation, increased demands and changing uses, as well as deferred infrastructure needs. Legislation is yet to be introduced to amend the watercraft fees. However, conversation and I believe some advocacy is happening through our Michigan Waterways Commission. We're fortunate in Michigan to have the water resources we do, as Randy highlighted, in terms of both the natural features as well as the infrastructure that supports boating activities across the state. Nationally, we move back and forth each year between second and third with total annual watercraft registration, and we're fourth in the nation with more than $11.7 billion in annual economic impact. Infrastructure, again, another theme here within this space, over $100 million of backlog needs. And the increased construction cost we see each year, combined with inflation, really limits what revenue streams you do have to make an impact. The other component that I want to talk about with this increase is to generate nearly $6.9 million of revenue in the first 3-year cycle. However, 40% of that will go out through the Waterways Grant Program, which is available to local units of government for their own water-based infrastructure, as well as the Marine Safety Grant Program, which again is available for county sheriff departments. Again, another plug there for the State Waterways Commission, as well as the Michigan Boating Industries Association, who is in support of seeing this proposal through. Some additional recommendations to highlight. $17.7 million is the total additional spending authority between the watercraft registration that I just discussed and the anticipated funding increases from the change with the gas tax. That, again, the gas tax component, 2% within the state's constitution comes back. It goes to the Waterways Fund, the Snowmobile Trail Improvement Fund, and the Recreation Improvement Account, which is another trail-based resource that we utilized. Another really impactful area that I want to highlight is the $1.4 million that's proposed for one-time yet continued general fund support of the Nature Awaits program. That is the 4th grade curriculum that really looks to get every 4th grade class out to a state park for educational activities. So far, this program has reached over 60,000 students. We conduct an exit survey with the teachers. 98.5% of them would recommend the program to other students and teachers. And it provides that great exposure to the natural resources and the benefits from being outdoors for mental and physical well-being. And really, these are our future stewards and conservation leaders. Another highlight really quickly is through our Michigan History Center, supporting gift shops at Hartwick Pines State Park and Strait States Park, as well as some additional restricted funds to expand supervisor capacity at Sterling State Park, Strait State Park, and Brimley. And finally, support of additional state restricted funding for cohesive management of Grand Haven State Harbor, which is state-owned and currently concessionaire operated, and St. Jean Boat Launch, which is city-owned and concession operated, which would be a lease to the department to oversee. Some supplemental requests. Chair Borton, you introduced trust fund bill last year. I know Senator Cherry has introduced Senate Bill 829, $45 million in grants, 55 development projects, and 10 acquisitions to the local units, 5 development grants, 5 acquisitions to the state side. As outlined earlier, you know, that gas tax investment, so $13.6 million is kind of the current projection for gas tax coming back to the department. I'll pause on the wildlife and fisheries request totaling $17 million for infrastructure needs. It's a pretty big list within both divisions, and this is reinvesting one-time investment earnings off of the Game and Fish Protection Trust Fund, so strong investment returns the last 2 years. We want to put into those critical infrastructure needs so they're not emergency failures or repairs. And last but not least, a chronic wasting disease consortium study, which is about 8 states that will be participating over 8 years. Collaboration with philanthropy, with county governments, with other entities. We don't do this alone. Very creative solutions that you can see in the list here, ranging from the new state park coming online in Flint, Genesee County, the Mott Foundation, all the way down to adaptive equipment for tracked wheelchair programs by way of Callie's Cure for paralysis. We've got an endowment fund outside of the state that supports conservation easement, long-term monitoring. And I'll close with Hunters Feeding Michigan. You know, support from the Cook Family Foundation, DTE. This is really addressing a resource issue, but also putting a protein source on the table, which I think is our closing slide.
This is our closing slide. This isn't in the exec direct, but many of you heard about this last year, and we have received some money to expand the program. With all of the SNAP benefit issues in the state, we were asked to expand this program, so I did want to throw it out there. Our goal is, we did about 140,000 pounds of venison this year, and that was about 560,000 meals of protein. We wanted to double that, going a little over double that to 400,000 pounds if we can get there, and over 1 million servings of protein. And that goes through the organizations that Dan had mentioned. So I did want to highlight that. Those organizations are up there as well. And 1 in 7 children in Michigan go hungry. I think you guys know a lot about what happens here in Michigan. So we just feel like we can help in that area. There's a lot of protein on the hoof, right? We've got MDARD here that's constantly telling us too, there's too many deer. So we want to utilize that resource and make it available. And with that, thank you. Hopefully this resonated with you today.
Thank you very much. And before I go on to questions, and because I'm the chair and we have limited time, I'm going to ask mine first. And if there's time left, I'll go to my members. I want to start with the Wildlife Division. You know, you talked about obviously the importance of hunters and fishermen and the fees we receive from them, you know, to sustain your department and conservation in general, which I agree. There's no secret that we're down 200,000 hunters, if my numbers are correct, from our all-time high. You know, I live in a district with an abundance of wildlife, used to be a very popular spot for hunters. I literally can't go anywhere, gas station, restaurant, a funeral, with people coming up to me talking about their hunting and fishing experience. And I always ask them, you know, are you continuing to do it? Are people coming up from downstate? Are you encouraging family? And they're saying no. They say literally they don't want to come up here anymore because they feel they've got to bring their attorney with them to go into the woods or out in their boat. They said regulations have become so burdensome and so hard to follow that literally they can't come up and do something without, you know, facing what I would say overly aggressive law enforcement. And so the experience has gone away for them. They still want to do it. As a businessman, I know if I was losing customers in my business, like apparently is going on here, the last thing I'm going to do is blame it on my customer and say, I'm going to raise the price on you. I'm going to figure out a way to give them a better experience to bring them back in. What are your thoughts on that and why we're losing hunters and fishermen?
Yeah, Frank, thanks for the question, Chair Borton. This is not a problem that's unique to Michigan, and I think which points to the idea that it's not necessarily a structural problem in the way that what we charge for licenses or how our regulations are structured. We've been aware of this idea for a long time, been working really hard to simplify our game regulations, particularly to deer, related to deer, and I think you could argue that there have never been more flexibility in the way that deer regulations are structured now and the choices that deer hunters have. There's a recognition that there's a lot of competing time and that people are competing things to do with time, and people are not choosing to hunt and fish as much as they used to relative to other things that they could be doing. That's the challenge we're facing, and why hunter recruitment and retention is so important. We're doing other things in the department, like trying to make our licensing system and our harvest reporting system much more convenient, so that it's easier to buy and more convenient to buy licenses through your phone on a shorter turnaround, and that it's easier to report your harvest to the department so that we can collect that important data. We're very aware of these challenges and would like to do a lot more to be able to help with hunter recruitment and retention and reactivation.
Okay, very good. And I think all departments know that it's been a priority for this legislature to try to cut red tape, you know, wherever possible, which leads me to my next question, talking about red tape. And this might be for the Deputy Director. Otsego Lake Township is in my district, and they applied, I guess, a few years ago for a grant for a restroom. And they weren't able to get anybody to even bid on it. They could not find anybody. They finally found somebody, and they gave them the contract from the DNR, and that contractor said, there is no way. It's 400 pages long. And the contractor says, it's not worth my time to do this and to try to comply with everything they want. So here, a simple restroom on a trail system in my district can't be built because nobody's interested because of red tape. Is there anything we're doing to take a look at some of that stuff and simplify it?
Actually, yes. Our current director has had several conversations with DTMB. All the contract language is determined by them. the bids go out through a process that we're required to follow. And I will tell you, a lot of times, we fix our own restrooms, our park rangers and everything, so we, don't have to really go through and try to find a contractor that's willing to do any work in state government. It's not just DNR, it's all state government contracts. So, yes, our current director has had several meetings with them, because we had the ARPA money, remember, that came in through when COVID hit, and instead of getting all the projects done on the list we wanted, it's down to about half that because of the costs and the contracts, and nobody wants to do those kinds. So that's hurting us a lot, so I understand that.
All right, thank you for that. Rep. Mueller?
I don't know who to address this to, but it's regarding mineral rights. Would you like to explain the current stop work order that was sent out by the DNR to sand gravel operations that were formerly on state land, where the state's trying to come back and retroactively take mineral rights from these sand and gravel companies? It's my understanding that sand and gravel is not considered a mineral, and that is for like oil and gas, but apparently there was a letter sent out by your department with that. Would you care to explain a little bit more behind that?
Sure. So that particular company was mining aggregate for quite a few years before recognizing, or maybe they knew it, but us recognizing that that was on state land and that money should have royalties paid off of it. There's a percentage and a formula for that go back into the trust fund. So we did send a note saying, we recognize you've been, mining on state land, and we'd like you to pay some of it back, not all of it. We worked with the governor's office through that, recognizing that aggregate right now is super important for roads. And so we didn't want to shut any of that down, but we do want to, moving ahead, make sure that it is rectified. Their answer to that, I think, was that they weren't getting enough business at the time to be able to pay back some of that, but I'm not sure with all the roads projects going on why they're not getting much business. So we're still working on that issue and trying to rectify it so they can continue to operate and help in the roads.
Okay, so how many years were they operating that was it your department that failed to realize they were on state land? So why are we penalizing a company for your mistake? And how long were you gonna go back and retroactively take that money? And how much money were we talking about at the beginning that you were going back to talk to this company about?
Right. I can get you the exact numbers on that, but I think it's been over a decade or more that they've been mining.
So what you're doing is you're penalizing a company for your mistake of your organization of knowing what land is yours and what land is not, correct?
I'll lean in. I think my understanding of the history of this is that they acquired severed rights, and through the title work, it wasn't clear or apparent that the state had those rights. So activity had incurred over time. So our state's geologist was doing an aerial photo review within that particular county, and that's how it was identified.
But the question really is it fair to penalize a private business for the state's ineptness on knowing what land is theirs? That's like,
we know what land is ours.
having someone pay property
There is an
taxes.
active lease there.
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm talking. Don't shake your head at me. You're a department head. You're appointed. I'm elected. You understand? Be respectful. This is about a taxpayer's business being taxed by the government for your error. I don't even know who these people are. I just heard about it, and you're telling me about it. So you're gonna tax and you're gonna fine a company for your mistake. That's unacceptable. I have no further questions, and I don't even want to talk to you because you're disrespectful.
Okay, I'll go to Rep. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Deputy, and your team. Let's see, Finance Director Lord, Mr. Keith, and Chief Randy. Basically, you sound the alarm from my interpretation. We've been entrusted with one of the most precious natural resources ever, the state of Michigan. And, I did get some information from Mr. Scott at the last meeting about some of the work we've done, but still have outstanding activities to do. It's really like the roof on a house. If the roof is leaking, all the internal components of that house is gonna falter. So the roof of the state of Michigan outdoor natural resources is leaking bad. That's my analogy from what I heard, and thank you for sharing that. And so, you know, we're entrusted with this natural resource, just as we entrusted with the security of our home by making sure the roof's not leaking. So it's up to us. What are we going to do? Now, we can hear this information and discount it, and then that leak's going to eventually cave in. Or the resources that you're saying we're going to have deficits over a period of time will happen. And the erosions of our wetlands and those accommodations that attract wildlife and wildfall, all those amenities that we cherish. So thank you for sharing that, because a lot of this information I heard today I hadn't heard before. And it's very helpful for me as a legislator to prioritize what's important. And I think the Department of Natural Resources, Mr. Chair, my colleagues, is very, very important to our well-being. And so I do want to just quickly and finally talk about the youth program, Natural Awaits Education Program. I'm really excited about that program. I'm glad I got the data about it. That's a future trajectory of new hunters, new fishers, new outdoor enthusiasts. And so those kind of investments we have to make. Also the infrastructure. We cannot not repair our infrastructure. So my attitude is I want to do everything I can to support, I think you said $100 million. Was that a number that encompasses in totality, Mr. Finance?
In totality, in our 5-year capital outlay plan, it's $992 million of needs, infrastructure.
But the $100 million you referenced encapsulate
That was specific to the waterways infrastructure.
waterways, okay, so I know we probably just can't bite that right off the top, but we have to make a concerted effort. My attitude is to make sure we support that financial obligation to make sure the roof's not leaking, the roof doesn't cave in, and so we can have the robust natural resources that we are known for. And being 33rd in spending is also a problem. I know that came up as well. And so we got a lot of work to do, Mr. Chair. And I'm willing to, roll up my sleeves and do the work to see where we can make sure we fund these very important requests. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Rep. McKinney.
Oh, man, I know we have a deadline. I appreciate that. Just a quick question around the Iron Bell Trail. I've heard about this statewide trail for years now. Wanted to see if there's any update on the status of it, any segments that need to be completed, any more money we need to be putting towards it. Yeah, can you guys elaborate on what's happening?
I know there's still gaps,
Okay.
but I will say, the Natural Resources Trust Fund, the annual grant program that's available for state and local units, that remains a priority of that board. So when those applications come in, they do receive some bonus points. But I will say non-motorized trails in general is one of our unfunded categories. So with all those different restricted funds, there's only very small slices of certain ones that go specifically to non-motorized trails.
Thank you.
Rep. Roth, you can wrap it up for us here. Quickly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to make it quick. I'll follow up with you guys offline, that's fine. One thing that I've been concerned about seeing in some of the numbers is a decrease in ORV licensing or activities with trail. We don't see that up north. We're seeing more and more. Our winters haven't been that big, and the last two have been pretty good, but I keep hearing from the department that the numbers are going down. I'd like to see that, because we don't see that up north, I don't believe. So we're seeing more. I'll follow up with other stuff down the road. Thank you, guys.
All right, I want to thank you all for being here today. DNR, MDARD, I appreciate it. I know Deputy Director Lott and I have a very open line of communication, and I look forward to continuing to work with her on some of the issues. We've got a lot more questions. We just don't have time. I know I'm meeting with the department tomorrow, so maybe we can talk about some of those things. So thank you. With that, we have no absent members today. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.